we were talking about all of what you've talked about when you've come on recently, how we need to eventually bring this back to some extent. Is it possible to bring back any type of civility in public or private life when social media is just so insidious? And I don't know. Is it the politicians we've had that cause it, or is it the environment and the proliferation of all these social media sites? Arthur, how are we going to do it?
I think that we can. I think there's there's a huge scope for opportunity. So what happens is and let me back up a little bit. Going back to the financial crisis, this is a very predictable thing, where you have a lot of, coming out of a financial crisis, ordinarily you have 10 to 15 years of really uneven growth. And there's not a macroeconomist on the planet that knows how to solve this. You got Milton Friedman as president of the United States, which would be great. And still, you would have 80% of the economic growth 10 years out of a financial crisis going to 20% of the population. And that leads to populism and polarization and kind of a fear-based politics where both sides say, somebody's got your stuff and I'm going to get it back. Well, the competition in politics is really important in a democracy. Iron sharpens iron. But if the competition is set to say, the other side is evil, rich people, bankers, immigrants, foreigners, whatever. The other is going to take your stuff and I'm going to protect you. That's a bad competition. We need to shift the competition toward, we have a competition to see who's going to create more opportunity for Americans. And I think that that's actually what's going to happen in the next 5 years. Republicans are going to try to do that through more economic growth and fewer barriers, more entrepreneurship, and the left through better safety nets, et cetera. And that's a virtuous competition. That's where I think we need to get. That will solve our problems.
It's not just social media either. If you watch Fox News and then you watch CNN, and if you watch them side by side, it's pretty staggering. The approach. I mean, well, they're drafting behind this like unvirtuous competition. The media wants to make money. I mean, it's capitalism. It makes perfect sense. I understand it. I get it. I'm sympathetic to it, as a matter of fact. But when they basically see all these incentives to fire up these passions of fear and hatred, as opposed to, love and opportunity, which is what we actually need, you're going to get this polarization in the media. Look, you and I both know everybody should be tuned to CNBC all the time. That's the way to go. But until we actually have politicians and leaders that are trying to lead us in a better direction, the media is going to be following behind these bad directions. Do you think that President Biden is going to be a uniter from the indications that you're getting so far, Vice President Harris?
It's hard to say. Vice President Biden, when he was Vice President of the United States, certainly had that impulse, and he wants to. The problem is that he's surrounded by a lot of people that are living in the past decade, which is pretty normal as well. So the key thing is going to be who's going to win in the Democratic Party. Is the Democratic Party going to go rail to rail like the Republican Party did and be polarizing and populist and say basically evil people have your stuff and I'm going to protect you? Or are they going to move back to more of an opportunity culture? Time will tell.
Hey, Arthur, I wanted to talk to you about two things. One is, this has become political. I don't think that there's an equivalency here. And look, we can say all sorts of things about CNN, but I think when you look at what Fox was doing, especially in these past couple of months, they were lying to the public. And I think as Mitt Romney said very directly that evening after the attacks, the best way to respect the public is to tell them the truth. And so I think that we do ourselves a disservice when we talk about these things in an equivalent way. Don't you think?
Well, I think that the biggest problem that we have, look, if the president of the United States is a Republican, there's a populist conservatives type Republican, then what you're going to see is more power from forces of media that have, the political forces in tow. Now, what you're going to actually see is when the Democrats are in charge, if they behave just as badly as President Trump did, which would be terrible, that you're actually going to see the forces in left-wing media that can be just as powerful as what we saw in the last 5 years. So, there's equivalency in intent, if not in actual power, to be sure. And what we all have to do, no matter what we believe, look, if you're conservative like Joe and me, if you're liberals, you basically have to look to keep your own house in order. You basically have to hold your own side to a higher standard. Now, what we're doing in this country is we look at the other side and say, those guys got to get it together. That won't work. A liberal, criticizing a conservative, that gets nothing done. Liberals should say liberals have to be more virtuous and better, and conservatives need to do the same thing. That will actually give us progress.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.